The question is that the bill be now read a second time, and I call the member for Warringah.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Well, I rise to speak on this bill, and I have to wonder whether actually government MPs have genuinely read this legislation when they start talking about how this is going to help small businesses. This, to be very clear, Excise Tariff Amendment for Draught Beer bill. It is only going to apply to tap beer. So all those small businesses that bottle are not getting the benefit of this. So maybe pause and reflect as to why it is that the government is picking and choosing within the same industry only the big hotel associations, RSLs, all those that have the beer on tap will get a freeze in the excise. Small breweries that bottle will not get this. I'm not sure that you are aware of the distinction that is happening. Right now, across Australia, and sharply felt in Warringah, independent brewing and distilling industry is in the grip of what many describe as a recession. This industry is integral to our small business ecosystem, and yet, like many small businesses, they are being squeezed from every direction. Pandemic-era debt, inflation, rising input costs and increasingly burdensome excise tax. Last September, together with fellow crossbench MPs, I wrote to the Treasurer calling for urgent relief for distilleries and brewers, proposing to reduce the impact of the alcohol excise on distilleries. Now, this bill takes a small step in the right direction. It's a welcome pause on draught beer excise inflation, but what about everyone else in this industry? Why is it that only the big players that have access to the tap contracts within the hotels and the RSLs are having access to this freeze on excise indexation? It leaves behind distillers and barely touches the structural issues facing small brewers, and the government has not given any explanation as to why. There should be no arbitrary policy divide between breweries and distilleries. They're all small manufacturers. They both employ locally, they both enrich our communities, and they all deserve a fair go. Although the government has decided to pick and choose winners rather than extending this support to the whole industry. And I have to ask, why is it? Why is it that the government is only choosing essentially to assist an industry that has the lobbying power, that has the access to the doors of ministers? Warringah, from my point of view, I care about small businesses and I care about making reform and these kind of support measures, making them fair to ensure all small businesses have access to them. Warringah is home to an incredibly vibrant brewing and distilling community, from freshwater brewing, Dad and Dave's, Seventh Day Brewery, Broken Bay Brewery, to their iconic Manly Spirits and all the creative makers throughout Brookvale's independent precinct. Our independent brewers and distillers bring together the Warringah community. It's because of them that we have community events like Brookie Fest, an annual precinct-wide street party. They employ locals, young people getting their first jobs, skilled brewers, hospitality workers, delivery drivers. They support local artists, food suppliers and tourism. And when one of these businesses close, the loss ripples far wider than just the venue. And yet those local brewers and distilleries in Warringah have expressed to me that while they recognise the positive intent of this legislation, its practical impact on small independent breweries is likely to be minimal to zero unless they change their operation, because it will only apply to draught beer. This is because tap access in pubs and clubs is locked up by long-term contracts with multinational brewers. A 2017 ACCC report confirmed that a significant portion of taps in venues, and many of the venues that I've heard listed by previous speakers, in particular government backbenchers, those venues, the long-term contracts, are tied up by multinational brewers. The ACCC report confirmed that a significant portion of taps in venues are tied to exclusive or near-exclusive supply deals. Therefore, many small breweries are unable to benefit from drought-specific excise relief, regardless of this bill's pause on indexation. Another challenge left completely unaddressed is the competitive barrier affecting growing brewers as they exceed the excise remission cap. Brewing and distillery businesses in Warringah have voiced their frustration at the sharp increase in payable excise as they grow beyond the cap, eroding profitability. Additionally, the indexation freeze just does not extend to bottled or canned alcohol. So again, We're talking about this picking and choosing. One Warringah brewer has already ceased packaged wholesale production because of the indexation freeze only applies to draught beer, not cans or bottles. Others tell me they're approaching the excise cap and worry about the steep cliff once they pass it. So how did we get here with such a complex system? Excise on beer and spirits is indexed to the CPI twice a year. Since 2020, excise has risen nearly 20% during the same period. So think about 2020, in 5 years, it's nearly been a 1/5 increase, 20% increase already. And while at the same time, for these small businesses, energy prices have surged, hops has increased by more than 50%, malt rose by nearly 20% in a single year, utility costs almost doubled, refrigeration, transport, storage, finance costs all ballooned. In just 2 years to April 2025, 51 independent breweries have closed or entered voluntary administration. These are the small businesses you all talk about. This is a sector worth nearly $2 billion annually to the economy, and with the right policy settings, distillers could become a $1 billion export industry by 2035. We cannot let short-term piecemeal measures undermine what should be thriving Australian manufacturing success story. We need a comprehensive strategy. Yes, pause on draught beer excise indexation is welcome, but it doesn't fix the problem for small businesses and small breweries. Anti-competitive practices in tap contracts. If you really want to give small businesses a fair go, that needs to be looked at. The steep excise cliff once producers exceed the remission cap. The exclusion of distillers. Again, we have a thriving boutique gin distilleries, many areas around the country, and yet they don't get any of the assistance that the Hotel Association seems to be able to get for tap beer. And what we do need is we have to look at how we're going to help everyone within this sector. So from that, the exclusion of the distillers, rising input costs that continue to outpace revenue. So I've already pushed for broader, fairer reforms, including through my letter to the Treasurer and through amendments, and consulting with Warringah's brewing and distilling community. And they are pleading for the government to make this fair reform, not just piecemeal and picking at favourites. A thriving brewing and distilling sector should be ambitious, innovative, sustainable and supported by a government willing to create conditions for small manufacturers to grow. This temporary pause in beer excise indexation, it's a reprieve for some breweries, but not the long-term solution that alcohol producers of all kinds have been calling for since the pandemic. Broader measures should be taken to address the anti-competitive nature of the beer industry and ensure that the long-term sustainability of brewing and distilling industries is safeguarded. So I will be moving a second reading amendment, as circulated in my name, to ensure that these issues are brought to the fore. And I urge government members to have the discussion internally of why are you only picking certain areas of beer to protect or to assist with this excise freeze. The amendment that I propose recognises that struggling brewing and distilling industries need assistance. It acknowledges the ongoing financial strain, and this bill ignores so many distillers entirely. And it calls on the government to freeze indexation for all alcohol excise until the 1 August 2027, not just those that have the passes to come into Parliament to advocate on behalf of their industry and their scale. Index the excise remission cap annually in line with inflation and extend the deadlines for payback of excise debt to the ATO. Assist these small businesses rather than taking a stick to them and actually creating an even more anti-competitive environment by assisting the big players that have access to the tap-on-tap contracts. So whilst I welcome that some measure has been introduced, please do the job properly, make it fair and consistent, create a competitive field for all businesses, and genuinely put good legislation through this place.